Hey, hello. Welcome to episode number 85 of the People We Love podcast. I am Adam Choi. What is up? If you are new here, what I do is interview people from all walks of life, often comedians and other artists, about their lives and careers. It's a casual conversation, but I also ask everyone to highlight someone they love, someone who inspired them, supported them. For more, check out peoplewelove.podcast.com. That's People We Love Podcast, and the Instagram handle is also People We Love Podcast. And you can find me on Instagram as well, Adam Choi, my name. And remember to tap subscribe or follow on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on. And 5-star positive reviews on iTunes are greatly appreciated as well. So, today's guest is Windsor, Ontario, Canada's own comedian Dave Merheje. The oldest of 4 siblings, he recalls standing in front of the TV as a youngster, imitating the commercials. Although he wasn't great at hockey and didn't like wearing his high school uniform, he pretty much always knew he wanted to be a performer and a comedian. And he very much became those things. His journey has led him to Toronto, New York, and to Los Angeles. But it was in Toronto where he really found his voice and a community of supportive comedian friends, including the subject of episode 82 of this podcast, the also funny and talented Alex Pavone. I've kind of always wanted to do an episode where somebody talks about somebody else, and then later have that somebody else come on and talk about that earlier person I had on. Well, now I've done it. So let's just get into it. Here's Dave Merheje. So it's good to see you today, Dave Merheje. Thank you for joining me on the Zoom.
Thank you for having me, bro.
Oh, for sure. How you holding up during this super fun 2020? It's been an awesome year or what?
Yeah, just been able to catch up on a lot of shows that I wouldn't have watched.
Oh, you're accomplishing goals. I got you.
I am. Yeah, I'm getting these. Got to watch Game of Thrones, which I never watched before COVID. So I was able to watch all the seasons and the whole thing. So,
what'd you think? I'm not a watcher. Nothing against it. I just haven't watched it. But are you a fan? They won you over?
Yeah. They won me over big time. I didn't really put any like a diehard fan or anything like that. I just kind of watched it to watch it, and I enjoyed it very much.
What's the most engaging aspect of the show? It's just that the stories, they keep you wanting more? Is that just pretty much it?
Yeah, I guess I don't know. For me, it was the storyline, obviously, but rooting for Jon Snow. And then the fighting, obviously. I guess is the and the power, and then ruling another place, like conquering. Like it was, it was amazing. It was just shot so well. The storylines that were very enjoyable.
Cool. And what about you? What about your life? Let's get into it. What do you remember from the early days? Where were you born? And you're from Canada, correct? Originally?
Yes, I was born in Windsor, Ontario, which is on the border of Detroit. So we're like a border town. So I grew. That's where I grew up, in Canada. And at first there wasn't. Well, there was, but it grew. But over time, it grew. I'm Lebanese. I come from a Lebanese background, and there was a large Middle Eastern population in our hometown, which is super dope. Culturally, you get to. I never been to the Middle East, which I should go for sure. But yeah, growing up, our mayor was Lebanese at one point, and it's just my whole family, relatives are there. So that's where I grew up. Went to school. And I went to college there, and then I eventually moved to Toronto, which is about 4 hours from Windsor.
Gotcha. And what do you remember from even before elementary school? I always ask people, if that's kind of the earliest memory question, if anything jumps out at you, early memories, first memories. For some reason, they're usually bad for people, it seems like.
Yeah. Well, I remember I don't remember it. It's half and half. My aunt was double riding me as a kid. I think I was 5, and she was babysitting, and my legs got caught in the bicycle spokes, and I was in a hospital for 5 months, I believe, with one leg up, the one that was hurt. Yeah, so I was very early on. It was very,
how old were you?
Young. 5, I think.
Yeah, that's traumatizing. Yeah, people remember hospital visits, traumatic hospital visits when you're 4, 5, 6 years old. Those.
I remember a stuffed animal, like a bear, that my mom, I believe, gave me, and it was with me in the hospital. I still remember the bear.
Yeah, you still have it?
No, imagine I should
But you
have.
still
No,
have
no,
you
no.
still have your leg though, right? Correct?
I still have my leg. Yeah,
Yeah,
I still have
you
my
were
leg.
walking before. I saw you walking before, but that could have been a fake one for all I know.
Well, I have one leg shorter than the other because of that accident. So I have to wear a lift. Like I found out when I was 14, I had bad back problems, and it was a busboy at the time. And I thought it was weird to be that young and have this much backache. So we went to the doctor, and the doctor's like, they didn't monitor your leg growth properly from that accident, and then the one leg grew longer than the other. So I've been wearing a lift in my left shoe since I was 14 years old. Now I'm 40. So I've had to walk around with that. So it is kind of like, it was like always hilarious. Like if I went to get shoes at a store, I'd be like, oh, I got to try the shoe first with the lift in it because it'll
Yeah,
dictate what size I get.
that makes sense. Is
Yeah.
other than that, is there any like do you have issues like pain, or is it a pain in the ass with the lifts thing, or is it just something that's part of like your routine so you don't even almost think about it at this point in your life? You're just like, oh, I just gotta
Yeah,
wear this lift.
yeah, I think it's part of the routine, but I'll get like if I'm standing for too long, I'll get bad backache. So, but it is part of the routine in everyday life now. So it's there.
Gotcha. What about family? Did you have siblings growing up? Did you say?
Yeah, so my sister, so I'm the oldest. Then it's my sister and my two brothers. So
Gotcha.
there
Big
was four of
family.
us. Yeah, so me and my sister kind of like we're closer because like the age difference, we're both in our 30s. I'm sorry, I'm 40. She's late 30s. And then we had my two younger brothers, and they were more, I guess, close because they were closer in age in friendship at first.
Yeah, I want to skip ahead to something and then go back to your childhood
Yeah.
because you said you just turned 40 somewhat recently.
Yes. In
Yeah,
July.
and
Yeah.
yeah, well, happy birthday. And
Thank
I'm
you.
38, so I'm kind of on my way there. Is there anything I need to know? Am I gonna have to be depressed? Am I gonna like people gonna be sending me over the hill cards? Like, what do I need to know about turning
I
40?
remember. I think my like I felt more ache, but I guess I was like, I was boxing, like just trying to get exercise. So I think we started boxing for a bit. Maybe it was the timing, but I remember turning 40. I think the next day, I woke up with like pain, like my body felt sore, and I was like, oh, is that 40? But it could have been the boxing the few days before.
But you're cool. You're cool with it. You didn't go into a tailspin. Did people give you shit like about you're old or anything? Was you was
No, no, I was a good 40. My friends down here in LA were super, super sweet. Two of them woke me up. They actually like broke into my iPod or my home pods in my apartment, and they start playing music. So I woke up like being terrified that I was like, who's in the house? And then they were playing In the Club by 50 Cent. And then I hear a knock on the door, and I opened the door, and it was them. So they came in and
that's
said happy
funny.
birthday. It took me for breakfast. And then later on that day, they did another surprise with balloons and everything, like a group of us. So it was a very magnificent 40th birthday, man. It was
That's great.
super, super loving. And yeah, it was great.
What about 35 or so years before then? You know, elementary school, 5, 6, 7 years old. What kind of kid were you, and what were you into, and what kind of jumps out at you from elementary school age?
I think from what my mom told me, like, during like commercials, like during like between shows, or I would stand in front of the TV a lot, but I would stand in front of the TV and I would memorize the commercial and spit it back out to whoever was in the living room. I think she said
Interesting.
when I was like really young, I would do that.
And what about other stuff like that you were? What were you watching in between the commercials?
I think a lot of time, well, my dad would have like, I remember vividly, like my dad's a big hockey fan. So he would watch in Canada. It's called Molson. It was called Hockey Night in Canada. So
I've
he's a
heard of
big
it,
Toronto, yeah,
of
yeah. So he's a
course.
big
Yeah,
Toronto Maple Leafs fan. So he'd watch that. And I remember that at night, I would be in the living room hanging with them, and that would be on. So I always remember that being on a Saturday.
did you play hockey as a kid
Road
or
hockey. I
sports
play a lot of road hockey, and
on the street? Is that what you
I
mean?
tried ice skating. That was a disaster. I remember me and this Philip was a Filipino kid that I knew in school. We both were bad at skating, And it was just funny because we were both struggling. But my dad was big into soccer, so I played soccer a lot since I was a kid till I was like maybe like 19. Like I still played after, but I played more regularly between a young age to 18 because my dad was like into it and he played himself.
And what about school? Were you a good student in either elementary school, middle school, or when you were
Yeah,
younger?
I never really got into, never in any serious trouble. I remember the most trouble I probably got was like I wouldn't wear the uniform pants. I went to a Catholic school, and we had to wear uniforms, so I'd wear these pants and I remember Mr. Cusimano, I think he was my accounting teacher. He'd always kick me out to the office, but it wasn't anything heavy, obviously. But I was a decent student. I was a good student. And then I went to college. My mom wanted me to go to college. She wanted me to get a diploma, so I went there, but I just knew early on, and she did too, that I wanted to do stand up or just entertain. And she was cool with that. They were all cool with that. She just wanted me to get an education first. So
Yeah,
I
but
did
I mean,
that.
maybe, yeah, even before college, what about high school? Were you already is that when you got into comedy? Were you doing like high school theater or anything like that? Were you watching a lot of comedians? Like where were you at with what you're
Um,
into then?
my uncle Brian, when I was younger, he'd play like Andrew Dice Clay, Eddie Murphy, Richard Pryor tapes, like VHS, and me and my sister, my cousin, I think would watch it, and I was very intrigued, and I was like, really. Then I got into Richard Pryor, and then I think I was 14. I told my best friend Bodhi at the time, I was like, yo, I'm gonna be an entertainer or comedian when I grow up. So in high school, I wasn't really a class clown at all, or I wasn't into any plays or did any of that. I just kind of wrote stuff down, like thinking I didn't know how to write jokes. I would just write my conversations down that I thought were funny. And then when I was 19, I thought you had to be 19 to do comedy, like because in Canada it was 19 to get an O bar. So I wrote all this stuff down, I had it in a plastic bag, and I showed my best friend at that time, Hugo. And then, I was like, yo, I'm going to do stand up. And I think I did stand up when I was 19 at the Yuck Yucks in Windsor. They were doing like a talent search for best comedian in Canada, new comic in Canada. I bombed. I remember bombing pretty bad. But yeah, that was like, I never did anything in high school is even, at all. Like I know I let a few people know very little of what I wanted to be a comedian, but yeah, I was very shy. Like I wouldn't say anything in class, like out loud, like joke wise. I would always kind of turn to my boy and make a joke, but I was never a class clown.
Yeah. So you got into comedy, it sounds like around 13, 14 years old. You were just taking notes in high school, like
Yeah.
writing jokes and stuff like that. And it sounds like you wanted to be a comedian and
Yeah.
your mom wanted you to go to college and you're like, fine, I'll go to college. Did you have other like plans, like either junior, senior high school or even freshman year of college? Like, oh, I'm going to do this. Did you have like a backup plan or a major or like something you were going to pursue other than comedy? It was just get a degree and comedy.
Yeah. Bounce out. Yeah. I just
Wow.
and then my mom was super supportive. She's like, I always knew you wanted to do comedy. She'd come watch me and she's like, you're not you were like she'd be like, you were born to do this, but like I was like, oh, you're just saying that because you're my mom. But like, they were very supportive. My mom and dad, sorry, they weren't very like, oh, you need to go to school, you're throwing your life away. They were like, no, she just wanted me to get an education, but she was like, just go do comedy after. So that's what
Yeah.
I did.
Wow,
But
that's awesome that you said born
yeah,
to do this because I've talked to quite a few comedians and most parents do not say that, especially before they see their kid perform. And if the kid is good, they're like, okay, you look good. You look like that's your thing. That's when some parents might, concede that for lack of a better term. But to say just from the outset what it sounds like your
yeah.
mom's like, you were born to do this, that's pretty cool.
Well, she kind of like also like my dad would take me to the wrestling events in Detroit, and I would imitate the wrestlers before they did their entrance. So I think when I was a kid, I was like exhibiting some of the stuff
Performing.
that performing that she saw, and I was always into like award shows, talk shows, Soul Train, anything like the MTV Awards, Blockbuster Awards. I think they had them back then. I just loved the idea of performing. So I think she kind of knew I had the bug early on, and so they'd come to shows, and they're always supportive. They come to any shows I do. If I perform in my hometown, they're there. Like the
That's
whole
great.
family's there.
So you were graduated high school, you're in college
Yeah,
in Windsor, Ontario. you're
Yeah.
studying, you're doing comedy at the same time. Is that kind of what's going on? Like what happened after the first open mic or
Well,
whatever
I
it
didn't
was?
understand the process of comedy and how it works. So I thought you do like a couple sets and you get noticed. There was a local comedy club, Yuck Yucks. I would go do guest spots on a Thursday. And then I started to get into like ecstasy and drugs and stuff. And I kind of veered off. And then the manager at the time stopped putting me up. And then he told me in his office, he goes, dude, he goes, you were up there, you were doing well. And then, people are ahead of you because I don't feel you care. You should be here watching the comedians on the Fridays instead, learning from them. So he gave me this speech that was very helpful at the time. I probably didn't take it that way. And then I just started to come back, watch comics. Then I started to research places in Michigan to do open mics. So I think around and then my grades were dropping if I was trying to do comedy in college. So my mom was like, just do it in the summer. So then I did that. And then when I completed college, that's when I did it 5 to 7 days a week, like open mics until I moved to Toronto, which was like a year after college.
So you graduated and you were in
In
Windsor for
Windsor, I
4
was
years.
still, I graduated after 4 years of college. And then that year after that, or that year after I graduated, I would go to Michigan and do open mic. So I was doing sets in Windsor and then going to Michigan every day. So I was crossing the border every day, 7 days a week. And I
Wow.
did that for a year. And then I saved up money at a factory job I had. I was also working like the factory job shifts were 2 shifts, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. and 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So what I would do is if I had the early morning shift, I would usually get a homie to drive with me across the border so that I can sleep on the way back because I would only have like 3 hours of sleep. My mom, I was living at home, so my mom would make my lunch. So I went on this crazy schedule to hustle up money. I think I saved up like $16,000 to move to Toronto, and I was going on
Nice.
stage every night. So it was like this hustle that I was on, and then
Sounds
I
like
moved
it.
away.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're living the dream, living the hustling out there.
Yeah.
That's inspiring, man. That's cool that you were able to focus and even notice that you weren't as focused. Like that's a good sign.
Yeah.
It's
I
self
get
awareness,
that.
and it's always helpful that someone helps you.
Someone pointed out, yeah, for sure. I
Yeah.
owe him a lot. I think it was Steve was his name. He was the Yuck Yucks club manager in Windsor. Steve was his name. This tall ass, bald headed white dude. So I thank him for that stern talk.
What about some of the even highlights of doing comedy in Windsor, and even in Michigan, like in the early going? What did you find that you enjoyed the most about doing comedy, and maybe what were some of the even challenges in the early days?
Well, the challenges was the border at the time because this was right after 9/11. So it was like telling them, I was going over to do free shows, but they didn't understand that and they thought I was getting paid. So I remember I got stopped after like 6 months. I would tell them I was, and then they didn't believe me. So then I had to bring pay stubs. Like first they said a pay stub. I bring a pay stub. Then they said, we want a pay stub from your job every time you get paid. So I come back with stacks of pay stubs. Then I was in there once, and this is in the customs office. They were like, do you pay bills? We need a bill. And I'm like, I don't pay bills. And they're like, what do you mean you don't pay bills? I live with my parents. And this one guy in the other booth he goes, how are you going to live with your parents and you're this age? I think I was 26. And they
Why
all
is
start
that
laughing.
the random government agent's business? Your personal life?
I have no idea, but
That
they all made fun of me, and then they go, "You need to bring a letter from your mother." Then I just thought they were joking. They're like, "Bring a letter signed." So I had to go home, get a letter. My mom had to state that he does not pay bills in this house, and I had to
yeah.
bring that letter back to immigration. That stood out to me in a sense that because I was hustling and I was there every night. What stood out to me in a positive manner was the people I met back then and how fun it was. We would drive to places like Grand Rapids, and it was like, we were just like young in comedy and just enjoying it. Like nobody really was, not that we weren't thinking bigger. We were just trying to get good. So we all had these experiences we took away from these different cities, and also the scene back then. I don't know, I haven't been back there in a long time, but like we were there, we were doing open mics at clubs, and we were watching ourselves go from like a club like open mic to maybe getting a hosting job or a middle job. You saw some increments of growth and success. And then in Windsor, there was a small group of us that had a Sunday night show at the Yuck Yucks, and it was always fun because we would do this Sunday show, you know, feeling ourselves. And then we would go to this bar called The Loop and we would get drunk, and Michigan comics were coming over too. We were booking them. So that lasted maybe, I think, 5 months, which was so fun. You know what I mean? You're new to comedy, you're doing well sometimes. And then, you know what I mean? You're hanging out with like audience members, then you're going
Yeah,
to
it's
this bar in
exciting.
Windsor. It's exciting. Yeah, that's what exactly it was. It was very exciting.
That's cool. Tell me about the journey to Toronto, and in Toronto, and I guess meeting Alex, and what happened in the Toronto scene when you got there and beyond.
Toronto, I wasn't even going to go to Toronto. I was thinking of going to Los Angeles or New York, but I didn't understand immigration, obviously, or getting a green card. So I met a headliner who was in town from Toronto, Jason Rouse, very, very funny dude. And he was like, you know, he was telling me, he's like, have you been to Toronto? I was like, no. And I was visiting Toronto because a buddy of mine, and it was in a band, his whole band moved out there. So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go up there and visit my homie. And then he's like, okay. And he's like, he got me tickets to watch Russell Peters back then at the downtown Yuck Yucks. And it was like electrifying that night. It was like, people were like, was so rammed. They were so excited to see him. And I was like, oh man, I shouldn't. And then he was like, you should move to Toronto. And then that's how I got to Toronto. But I didn't meet Alex until I got to Toronto very early on. I think like 2006 or five. I didn't meet Alex till maybe like 2008. I can't really remember. And him and another group of comics that were in his same, like, you know, started at the same time he did, would go to this room. And that's where I would see them all. It was this room in on the east end of Toronto. And I was like in just a different mind state. Like my boy at the time, he would tell me, come to this room, and he started to befriend that group. And then I slowly kind of made my way in. And then, you know, ever since then, we've been homies. And that's been like, I think 2007 or 8. I can't really remember, but it's been a
Wow,
long
that's all
time.
13, 14 years
Yeah,
at
yeah, yeah.
this point. Yeah, because I remember
Yeah.
talking to Alex, of course, and he was saying that other people were telling him that his style was almost seemed like an impression of you. Did you see him perform and have those thoughts in the early days?
Um, you know, I met him very early on, bro, and I became friends with him. So, you know, my people I knew and people he knew, obviously, they would tell me those things. They'd be like, oh, I think he might be like, you know, this is your style, but I never, you look, and I mean it. I mean, I'm not even like lying. I just felt like, you know, he was gonna find his voice originally. Like
Right.
I didn't look at it as like this guy is taking or whatever copying. I didn't look, I mean that, not because, you know, I'm not trying to lie here too. I truly meant it. Like I felt other times that other comedians maybe in that city might have been copying, you know what I mean? But I never felt that with him. I never felt that. I just thought he was going to find his voice eventually, and he did. And we are similar in the way we, like, you know, interpret some things at certain points. So I thought it was more of like, you hang around with somebody for a while, you start to pick up their stuff too. Like I do that too. If I'm with, there's a very funny comedian friend of mine, Nathan McIntosh. If I'm around Nathan for like 2 weeks straight, sometimes like my hand movements might be the same as his if I jump on stage, right? So I
Right.
never looked at it as like any like copying. I just thought, you know, like I said, he was eventually going to find his voice, and he did.
Yeah, and every comedian I seem to talk to when they're first starting out, they are doing an impression of someone else, whether unknowingly or knowingly or not. It's
Yeah,
like you almost have to start from somewhere, and
yeah,
usually you start from someone you like. And it seems like often it's a comedian that is not like you. Or I don't know if that's the case for you or for, you know, maybe not for everyone, but it seems like you're drawn to the type of comedian who's like not like you because you, like, I don't know, you wanted, because you think of it's like it's an impossible thing to
yeah.
do. So it's like, I don't know,
Well, for me,
who are your influences, would you say?
originally it started off obviously and still is by Richard Pryor. So I would watch Richard, and I just wanted to be like Richard. Everything about how cool he was, how vulnerable he was, and how honest he was. That's the thing I wanted to do from there. I said I wanted to be honest just like him. So I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I'm going to work hard to get as vulnerable as Richard was on stage. That was always a thing for me. And then it goes, then, you know, you're inspired by, I feel like after that it grows, like you're inspired by your peers, you're inspired by people ahead of you, but you're inspired by everybody. And there's been times where specifically Alex. Like I would see how he was growing or how he would rock a set, and the competitiveness in me wanted to do as good or better. So it was like,
You push
I
each
probably
other.
never we push each other. I don't know if I've had this discussion with him. I might have, I probably have, but I mean, I always thought like hanging out with him was like useful for me in a sense that, I would watch him and competitive. I wanted to be competitive. So I would see him smash and I was like, I'm going to do just as good or better. And, for all the years we've known each other in the scene, he's kind of, kept me at like kept me competitive in that aspect. Like I didn't want to be dry at all. Always wanted to be fresh. So he's somebody. He's one of the people that I always look to of like he's always going to inspire me because he's going to be always trying to get better. So then I don't want to ever get caught lacking. So I look to him and be like, yo, I gotta smash.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
cool. And he definitely said similar things about you, being inspired by obviously the stuff that you put out there for sure. And what else about the Toronto scene jumps out at you, kind of even after I guess 2007? When did you you just recently moved to LA, you said,
I moved
from
to,
were you in New York?
I moved to before, yeah, but I moved to LA in 2015 originally. So 2015 and 16, I was in LA, and then I moved to New York, and then I came back this past June.
Gotcha. So Toronto to LA to New
Yeah,
York and
back to
back
LA.
to LA. Yeah, I mean, why don't you could tell me about some of those experiences and times and what jumps out at you from, either the remainder of your time in Toronto and first LA and New York and to the
Well,
present.
Toronto was a thing, where it's the city I feel like I found my voice in for stand up 100%. I found my voice there. And then eventually, I started to get on TV there. I started to do festivals, TV tapings in Canada. So that was the birthplace I get for me in a sense of learning a lot of things before heading to the US. And then I got my green card eventually because you have to earn a status in Canada to show the US that you're out. I think it's called like I forgot how the term is extraordinary talent. That's what they tell you. The immigration is you got to prove that you're an extraordinary talent in Canada and that you need to be in the US. Um, so I started to work on my green card. But Toronto was the place that I was able to get on stage at some points when it was also music open mics and not only stand-up clubs, just music open mics combined. I was getting on stage sometimes 18 times a week, man. Like there
Wow.
was a period of like 3 years where we were just doing so much stage time and it was so fun to run around and really have no responsibility. I was doing like day jobs and I would like go from 9 to 5, come home, sleep for an hour, eat, go out and do mics and shows till like 2 in the morning, eat at late night, like Chinese food, sleep for a few hours, get up and do the same thing. We did that for like so many years that it just became this thing where we were just trying to I always wanted to be the dopest out of my city. And that's what I wanted to. I wanted to be basically the best comic to come out of that city. And then, I learned a lot. I learned, and the bonds that I have with these people, the other comedians and my peers, it's never forgotten. That's my favorite place that I've done comedy in is Toronto.
That's cool. You ever have any, without naming names, I suppose, unless you want to, do you recall any like negative experiences? I mean, I'm sure you've had a few over the years with different people in different cities, but I guess in terms of even Toronto, like during those years, did you ever run into
For
people who were
sure.
dicks or
The whole scene,
otherwise?
the whole scene, the whole scene at that time, they know who they are. I don't even have to say their names. They exactly know who they are. It was like, at the time, a long time, like I was doing setup punch format, but I always found that wasn't my voice. And I was like, let me try to find my voice. And I would rant for a long time where there wasn't, they used to call me Mr. Premise because there was no punchline. I would just rant. So like I was still finding my voice. So a lot of like comics, would say it to my face even. They're like, what are you doing up there? Even like close friends of mine, they were like, why don't you just go back to telling jokes? But I just knew that if I kept working at it, I would find my voice. So I think it was like one time this comedian came up to, well, I was doing his radio show, and he was like, "Hey man, I was getting tired of defending it." Like he said that to me. So I was aware of like the bad talk about me, but I wasn't aware of all of it. So there was a period where there was a lot of negativity, and it almost broke me because I was like, what am I doing? I'm not, all these comics are just hating on me. And I just couldn't understand, that it just to keep going. I would like, there was been times where I wanted to quit in that period, especially because the negativity got so strong.
That sucks.
So I
Why?
did, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, why do they care so much what your material is and how you present yourself? Why does that matter to them? Because I mean, if they don't want to book you, they don't have to book you. But why do people seem like invested in how you perform so much and what you perform?
I don't know. I always used to think about that, and I never really got an answer. And it was probably like, I was starting to do well as well. Like I was starting to do well, and I think that they would tell me like, I just don't get how you're getting. There's no punchlines here. It just seems like you're ranting to get applause. So there was a lot. I think a part of it was that they were not understanding why I was getting good responses when I found my voice. They're like, we don't get why this guy's getting a response. He's
Yeah,
just
they were
ranting.
jealous. They were jealous,
Yeah,
or it's always about their own insecurities. That you, I mean,
exactly.
honestly, it's commendable that you were not just brave enough to like try something outside the box, per se, but stick with it when it wasn't working. To have that amount of faith is impressive and commendable too. That's cool,
I
man.
appreciate it. It was just, I don't know. I just part of me, I watched a comedian and he did the same set in the same night, two shows. He did good the first one, and I think bombed the second one, or vice versa. And he said word for word, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it was just word for word. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I remember saying that to myself. I was like, I don't want to do that. So I would just do. That's one of the motivating things of like finding my voice is like I didn't want to do that.
Yeah, I got
And
you.
there was nothing
Cool.
wrong with that. You know what I mean? It was just like I needed to find. At the end of the day, you're doing it because you want to have fun and you love it. So if I'm not gonna just like spend 20 years doing it just for the laughs. I remember someone told me that it's just like don't do it just for the laughs. I remember actually a comic. It was this thing called Rant Room. He would let us rant. You put in $5 and he would just rant. There was no jokes. You couldn't tell a joke. And this act we did for like maybe 2-3 years, and it helped me find my voice there. And I remember he was telling us that he spent like 18 years doing comedy. And then he realized at one point, he goes, that's not my voice. And he had to start over. So I remember hearing that going, I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? I don't want to be in it and then being like, man, I don't want to do this anymore. So I just remember early on being like, I'm just going to find my voice. No matter how tough it gets, I'll figure it out eventually.
No doubt, no doubt. And what about so then we went to LA from
Yes.
Toronto. How did we end up there and what's that all about?
I always wanted to go to LA, I think as a kid or like early teen, because you see the movies and you see, you think that's the place, and it is the place. So I got there, but, man, I was having a hard time because I was getting, I would have a hard time getting on stage in LA, and I'd go back to Canada and I would be able to get on whenever I wanted. I didn't do well with that adjustment at all. And I was lying to myself at first saying that like, no, you're fine, but I wasn't. I think I got very depressed and I just didn't want to be in LA anymore because, it got tough and I wasn't willing to handle how tough that was. And I remember just saying to myself, I'm gonna move to a city. Even when I started to get on stage in LA, I was like, no, I want to get out of here. I want to just go to a city I'm going to enjoy. And that's when I picked New York. Because at that time, Alex Pavone was there, Nathan McIntosh and Julio Gallerate, all very funny comedians. And they were like, we were in a group chat together, which was like homies. So I was like, why don't I just go to New York and then kick it with them? And then that's what happened. That's where I went from LA to New York and then back here in LA
Yeah, it
now.
sounds like there's just more opportunity to get on stage in New York City. I
Yes,
mean,
yes.
and even I've heard even in Chicago there's more opportunity to get on stage than in
Yeah.
LA.
Yeah.
Why is that? Because I feel like there's so many like independent shows and small shows and private shows and DIY shows beyond even the club scene and bars. What is it that makes LA so challenging? Obviously, to get on amazing shows and headline at Comedy Central, or a Comedy Store, whatever place like that, prime time. Big shows that can be a challenge to get on. But what is it that it makes it hard to get on? Any shows. Shows. There's a lot of shows, but they're not good. Is that what it is in LA?
And
What is it?
I don't know if I have the answer for that just yet, or if I have the right answer. New York, man, it's just like so many clubs, dude. It's insane. And then there's like so many slots like within the club like itself. And then you have all the independent rooms. So I think just from what I felt when I was in both cities, there was just way more stand up in New York, just way more. So then you're able to get on more, I believe. And in LA, like you can still, when you get to a certain level here, I feel you can get on stage a bunch of times because you have a name for yourself. But I feel if you don't, it might be a little bit tougher to get on stages out here.
Yeah. What kind of places did you you named some of them, but what kind of places did you mostly perform at in New York? Or was it all over, alt shows and independent shows and clubs? It was just anywhere and everywhere you could. That was seemed like
I
a cool
could,
place.
yeah. Well, I wasn't really fully in the clubs. Like I wasn't really passed at any clubs. And then I ended up leaving, you know what I mean? But the New York Comedy Club was one of my favorite places to perform at. I do Gotham. They had the Comedy Juice there that was run by Chris Millhouse. Then you had the Brooklyn Rooms. But as for clubs, and I was able to do the Cellar, like opening for Mo Amer and Ronnie Chang. So I was able to get, and then Nathan McIntosh as well. So I was able to get to do some of the rooms in the Cellar, which was another favorite spot.
So those other comics you were naming, in addition to Alex, were also Toronto comics in New York.
Nathan is a Toronto comic. Mo Amer's, he has a Netflix special, Vagabond, and he's from Houston. But Nathan's from Halifax originally, but we started kind of together in Toronto, like years. Yeah. I've known him for 14 plus years.
That's cool that you're able to, reconvene and start a new life in New York or whatever, but also with these old friends and reconnect with them. Must have been cool to have that sort of home base of comics when you got there. And what led you from New York to LA?
COVID.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, COVID. It was like, I was like, listen, I'm gonna get out of here for a bit, at least a year. So I left June 9th. I flew out to LA and I've been living here since.
How long were you in New York for?
Probably 2017 till May 1st of 2017, I want to say. And then I left June 9th of 2019 or 20, maybe 20. Yeah, 20
of this year, right? So you haven't really done any stand-up in LA like since you've been back.
No, I haven't been on stage. The last time I was on stage was in March at the Bell House, and I was opening for Rami Youssef, a friend of mine.
From the show that you're on. Yeah, tell me how that all came together. Because you haven't gotten into how you got into acting or anything like that, or.
Rami I've known for like 10 years. So I met him at the Arab Comedy Festival in New York, like a long time ago. He was like 19. I think he was doing sketch at the time. And we had talked and, I mentioned I wanted to act and he was mentioning he was going to do stand up. And then like we reconnected, I think in 2015, like we would talk over time, but I saw he posted it. He was doing a show here when I first moved. And I hit him up. He said, yeah, come through. And then I came through and then we just kind of like started to hang out more. I would stay at his place when I would come visit. And then I ran into him when they sold the show. And then he was in New York. I was in New York. We were at the Stand doing the Arab Festival again. And he's like, he's like, you should audition. And I was like, yeah. And then I sent a self-tape when because I was in China at the time doing stand-up. And I sent a self-tape in and then I booked it. I think like 3 days later, my agent was like, yo, you booked the pilot. And then we shot the pilot in December. This was like November when I was in China, shot the pilot in December. And then the following April was when he called me and he's like, dude, we've been picked up. And then we started filming that September or end of September that year.
Do you have any acting experience before up to this point or?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, because you said you were you did some stuff in Toronto even, I believe.
Yeah, I
back in
was
the
a part
day?
of a show called on MTV Live. They did like a sketch show, and that show was going on for like 8 years. I was in the last year, and then I did a show called Mr. D that ran for 8 years in Canada on CBC. I was like a guest star on there, and I did 2 seasons, season 7 and season 8. And Jerry D is the comedian. It's based on loosely based on his life, and he's the one that gave me the chance for to be on a sitcom for the first time, which was in Canada. And for that, it was great. I learned so much. It was such a fun show, and it was such a great time. And then from there, I went to Rami.
But you had no, even before professional experience, you had no other experience acting, no training, no nothing like that. You just kind of, other than imitating commercials as a kid and imitating what you see on TV. Is that your furthest acting training you've done?
No, I took a class in 2009. I took a class in 2000, but that's about it.
Was it helpful? Was it just kind
Yeah,
of a little?
it was very eye opening. I didn't know anything about acting at all, so it gave me like at least the bare essentials to know what was happening. It gave me a look into that world that I desperately needed because I had no concept of it.
Is there anything that jumps out at you other than the obvious differences, between performing stand up and being an actor and, and the inherent differences? Is there anything that jumps out at you that's like how you approach them differently as an artist, or as a performer, like your mindset going in? Is there anything that's different for you with those two?
I think with acting, like, I started to in stand up, my act, I use my hands a lot. Like I use my whole body a lot, but it's like frantic energy that I have up there. And with acting, it's just, you just learn to control it more and use
Right.
other things. Like you use your face more. You can do a lot with your eyes. So it's like learning that part of the craft, which I kind of like wasn't doing, because with my stand up, it was like very ranty. So I was like, it
Makes
was a little
sense.
bit like out of control kind of thing. So with acting, you get to hone in on it more.
That's cool. Sweet. And what else about I mean, we we kind of covered it all. We're pretty much up to the present here. Like I mean, there's not really much else to talk about because you haven't been on stage, but things seem like they're good with the show. What's the
Yeah.
latest with it?
Oh, we'll go back to season. They got picked up. We got picked up season 3 a few months ago, so that'll be in the new year where we start filming it. So it's season
Yeah.
3. Season 1 and 2 is on Hulu in the US right now, so you can stream that and watch and catch up. Watch both of them, both seasons.
Yeah, I'm sure you're looking to, forward to filming and
For
things
sure.
getting back to semi-normalcy and getting back on the stage. What are you looking more forward to? Filming the show or getting on stage, or is it's totally apples and oranges?
Yeah,
Both.
different, like both. Yeah, both, but like there's for both for different reasons too.
Yeah, well,
Like
it's good.
acting to see the cast and get back into doing the scenes that I love doing, and just being a part of that cast is so dope. And then with stand up, just going back to the clubs and hanging out with the comedians. So
Yeah, what about hopes, dreams, goals, plans for the future? What are maybe the longer term things? I mean,
to
for either stand up or performing for
stand up, to
you.
get to shoot another special, hopefully in the new year, and then try to sell a TV show or just get into movies. Um, yeah, those are the things, 3 things.
For TV would be something that you write and perform in.
Yeah, I've just been writing and just trying to get something for myself on air.
And for movies, would it be writing and performing? Also, just acting jobs in
Performing,
movies?
just acting, just acting.
Gotcha. Cool. You sound like you're keeping busy, even despite
Yeah, yeah,
the world being a little bit in flux, to say the least, right now, and
yeah.
possibilities a little bit limited. But we're all doing our best for sure, trying to stay creative and best we can in our own little worlds.
Exactly, bro.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time for sure. Is there anything else
Oh
that you
no,
want to
thank you,
talk
dude.
about, mention about Alex, your career, any of the cities you've worked in? Other than that, I'll
I
give
would,
you the floor and you can promote, plug whatever you want. Give your
I'd say support Alex Pavone's comedy. For myself, just watch Rami on Hulu, and then I have a podcast with my co-host Fivos and a therapist Ben, and it's called The Beautifully Anxious on all streaming platforms.
cool. And where can people find and follow you?
Dave Merheje on all social platforms.
Merheje.
Heejje.
You got it. You know how to spell your name.
I do.
I was going to prove to you that I know how low. Does it say it on my screen? It doesn't say it on my screen, right? Oh, it does. I do have a tab open with its spelling. I could have just read it, but I knew it off the top of my head.
No, that's good, dude. A lot of times people don't know that though. So I applaud you on that.
Yeah, I'm sure you get a lot of mispronunciations
Yeah.
by those dickhead border guys, I bet.
Yeah, for sure.
That
man, for sure.
That was enraging to me. You give anyone, any fucking middle employee with a uniform starts to get go on a power trip, like,
yeah, it was pretty dickish on his part. Like I wasn't even dealing with that customs officer. He just kind of leaned in from his booth, and he'd been listening to the conversation for a while, and he leaned in and he goes, he was like, oh man, he goes, you still live with your parents, like on that kind of tone. So and
yeah,
then
fuck that guy.
Laughing.
Yeah, where's he now? Yeah.
I don't know, but when I look back, it was very like comedically, it was hilarious that because he kind of popped his head out of the booth, so it looked hilarious from my angle because he leaned out like that.
See the humor in it, I guess. You're better than me. I was getting kind of I was getting upset when you were telling that story, and then you went into some other thing. You're like, oh, but all these other people were so supportive. So you got me. You leveled out my mood there after telling the enraging story about.
I'm glad.
I don't like people like that, and I don't know.
No.
I mean, I live. I guess maybe I live sort of in an idealistic world in my head to some degree, because it's like, if it pleases the queen, may I cross this imaginary border so I can earn a living? Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Like, someday maybe we won't have these borders between us, and people could move more freely and be truly free. But anyway, until that day,
Yeah.
I appreciate your time again. I'll let you enjoy the rest of your evening, and let's talk soon. Hopefully I'll see you on a stage probably next year, I guess.
Next year, yeah, we'll look for that.
Yeah, it's not going to be this year, but yeah, you never know. Find an outdoor, socially distant or whatever. One that doesn't get us yelled at by the general public, and that we could do safely enough. But cool. Again, thank you so much, and let's talk soon. You got it.
Sure, bro. Have a good night.
Later.
So there you have it. My conversation with Dave Merheje. I really appreciate him taking the time. Before that conversation, I had never met Dave or really spoke to him. So him being so generous with me is really appreciated. I'm pretty inspired by both him and Alex Pavone. And fuck those Border Patrol guys who harassed Dave. Anyway, for everything about this show, of course head to peoplewelovepodcast.com. And I think that's about all I got for today. I appreciate you guys listening. Thanks as always, and let's talk soon. Peace.